All right, welcome to Fatman Fabrications. This is going to be another video now of one of our newest products. This is what we've come up with for the later Ford pickup trucks. Basically 80 on up. We've got the 80 to 89s covered on this one. We'll be starting to work on more of them later on. A little background in this deal. As you can see, this is a frame stub as opposed to a cross member kit. We have made cross member kits for these trucks before. But a cross member on the existing rails becomes a lot of work, especially when you start having to take out that twin I-beam. The twin I-beam has always been a difficult setup to work with in these. Obviously with our bolt-in kit on our 67 F-100, we've had that bolt-in kit in this for years. We had tried to use the same concept as we have on the truck here, where you're cutting out the twin I-beam and you're bolting in a kit like this, bolt-in cross member kit. Now obviously we've had this around for a lot of years, never marketed it, and of course there are other versions available out there, but we're all kind of doing a similar process of getting that twin I-beam out. Any of the kits do require all of that fun work of getting the I-beam out of the vehicle. But what we found on these frames is, and we'll take a walk over here, you can see a little bit of the shop here. This is how we started. Here is the factory front frame section. Okay. What we found on these is these are even more difficult to pull the I-beam structure out than those earlier trucks. And then what you have is, as you can see with all these little rolled lips, it's not a parallel rail by any way, shape, or form, which makes obviously an installation of a cross member very difficult. And the other problem we're into is we found that it was incredibly weak. And once you took that twin I-beam out, these rails were pretty flexible. And then of course these mess with where we're going to be trying to set ride height to be reasonable. So the next plan of attack, since we've been building frame stubs for the last 25 or so years for a variety of different applications, all right, the boys came up with this idea of building a frame stub for these trucks. So here it is. This frame stub will now bolt in. You have the ability, if you want to, like the rear 4-bar kit, to weld it in if you so choose, but you can bolt this in, and once properly installed, you can go down the road with it bolted in. All right. Some tips on these. The hard part is going to be getting this in place. You're probably going to need the help of a few of your buddies. The frame is going to have to be spread, so you'll obviously remove the transmission cross member. And what we've done here, we've set it up where it's on jack stands, as you can see, but the jack stands aren't directly into the frame. They're under a piece of 2x, whatever you're going to use, 2x3, 2x4, 2x5, whichever. They're sitting on that, and now the truck is sitting on that. This is going to allow the ability to spread these rails as you'll need to get this in initially. You can see we've already got a porta power helping to push those rails apart. Now, of note, before you try and push these rails apart, you're going to want to come inside the cab and you're going to disconnect your cab mounts. So you'll have these two access holes on the floor. All right, you're going to unscrew those access holes. That will give you access to your front cab mounts. So you'll go underneath, you'll pull these off the top, you'll put the nuts and bolts aside as we've done here, and this is going to be obviously your new bushings when you're ready for that. It's always a good idea if you're going to be here doing this, might as well put in new body bushings, at least in the front cab. Okay, so once you get those out, that will allow you the flexibility of sliding the frame, as you can see with that porta power, spreading it out, all right, and getting to that point. Now, we're a little ahead of the game here. The first step of this is going to be with your original frame rail in it. You're going to do this like an install, just like we would do a stub. We have a video showing a 4951 Merc, a stub install, where Pete showed in there how to basically drop plumb bob marks onto the ground, okay, and use those marks for your points of reference, okay. As you can see, these marks. Now the initial ones, you can see on the floor, that's your front cab mount location, okay? Here is your cutoff location going across. And basically, you're gonna go and cut this frame, as you see here, 12 inches forward of that mark. So what you do is, you drop a plumb bob mark from the center of that hole, that's your cab mount, okay? And you go 12 inches forward on the floor. You do not want a diagonalist. You do not want to be trying to use a tape measure up here on the rail, all right, and working off this, all right? It needs to be a dead flat measurement. So we go to the floor, we measure 12 inches forward, we mark it, and then we basically take the plumb bob and go the other way up. We mark the rail, all right, we make sure it's level, and then we cut the rails on each side you see here. Another point of reference, you'll see that bolt hole here. We'll get your measurement in the instructions, how far forward you can do there, but it's always better to measure off the cab mount. This is a much more, I guess you'd say, consistent mount. Now the other thing too is, so we get this question a lot, where do I measure from there? Center of the opening, okay? So what you do is, you'll measure from the center of that hole down and mark that floor in that location, all right? And then what you'll see next is, Pete's taking the time, and he's marked where the axle center line is. Up here, he's marked your locations for your core support and your bumper holes. And basically what he's done is he's done locations and heights. It's important to get those back to where they were. Now the nice thing is, with a bolt-in system, all right, you will have some wiggle room to get that set, but it is very important to make sure those points are matched up as closely as possible, okay? The other thing we'll show you here is, one of the nice things about this kit is what the guys have done is, you'll see these 4 large holes on the inside, on the outside of these, on each side, okay? Those are for location with your 4, I don't know if you can see them very well here, but your 4 rivets right there that hold the cab mount, okay? So what you're gonna do is, once we get this in place, you'll bring it in and you will literally allow it to snap onto those points. Now, that will allow it, that should get you pretty darn close to where you're gonna be. Obviously, those holes are a little oversized for the idea that you can move it around a little bit if you need to for final adjustment to match where your measured out locations are, but that's gonna be your points. Now, once this is in, I will tell you, and you pull that bar out, it's gonna snug up pretty well, all right? And then you're gonna basically drill and set all your holes, okay?